Welcome to Ericsson's IP Talk Radio. I'm your host, Don McCullough. Our guest today is Phil Harvey, the editor-in-chief at Light Reading. You can reach him, if you like, at FuturePhil on Twitter, and you can read his bio there on lightreading.com/Phil. So, Phil, it's a good day to talk to you. I wanted to bring up with you some of the things that we've heard about operators and their business models. Do you think the industry will get beyond flat rate pricing as we go forward?
I think it will eventually, but I don't think someone's going to just flip a switch and our bandwidth is going to be metered like electricity. It's going to take some time, and service providers are going to have to experiment with pricing models to see what works. It's not going to be one solution, of course, that fits not just every country, but also every demographic model as well. But I do generally think that's the direction we're going. Is something closer to a metered system.
So when you say metered, do you think it'll be metered by the amount of data that you use, sort of what they call buckets, or do you think it'll be metered by application? You'll pay an extra fee for particular applications, or do you think it'll be a mix?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a mix. I think the first thing we're going to see is the metered by bandwidth buckets, simply because that's about where the industry is in terms of measuring traffic management and policy management. They're sort of comfortable with that part of it now, but I am excited by the idea that eventually it'll get to being metered by application. In other words, and this scares consumers sometimes, and I think unnecessarily so, but metered to where, consumers who do certain things will pay generally for what they're using, as opposed to just sort of paying an all-you-can-eat, and then whether they use it or they don't use it, they still have to pay the same bill. I think that if service providers can work it so that they're able to get more people on the network, and they're able to save the people who are on the network now more money versus what they're paying now, then I think we can move the industry that way sooner rather than later. But like I said, it's going to take some experimentation, and we're probably going to, we probably are going to, vary between service providers. Some will go strong with application-oriented metering, I guess you could call it, and some will stick with just buckets of bandwidth.
Okay, that's a great survey of what's going on. Can you think of any specific examples out there where operators, especially in the mobile broadband area, are moving towards maybe metered service or other kinds of charging models?
Yeah, well, we it's almost an old example now, but I mean, we watched what happened with the iPhone and thought that was the right idea. What we saw is that we went away from, suddenly overnight, we went away from an all-you-can-eat bandwidth model with the iPhone. But the reason it worked is because the data cap was something that most people, most of the time, could comfortably stay underneath. And then the added bonus was that everything they did on Wi-Fi still didn't count against the cap. So I thought that worked because it sort of gently nudged consumers into that, thinking of the bandwidth they used and sort of how much bandwidth they were using. Other models that we've seen internationally, has let certain applications go underneath the cap, like we were saying. They're letting people do, most of what they want, and they're really sort of saving the higher prices for the power users. And I think that makes sense because if you think about the real power users of data, usually have a pretty good reason, probably a business reason, for being such a huge consumer of mobile data. So they're probably in a better position to pay for that. If you're going to do a data cap system, you do need to sort of think about where most of the people on your network are. And what we saw with this iPhone thing was that most of the people, most of the time, actually were going to end up paying less per month than they were in the all-you-can-eat system. And even though consumers kind of hated it at first, they hated the idea of it, when they got their bill, I think everything was okay.
Okay, well, that's a good example. The iPhone's a good example. What about the technology? Do you think QoS, quality of service, or deep packet inspection is ready to be a game changer here?
Oh, it's already a game changer. One of our most switched-on analysts, one of my heavy reading colleagues, Graham Finney, is saying that, we're starting to see the second generation of policy management in place in some service provider networks. So what I mean by that is they're using deep packet inspection and quality of service instead of just bluntly controlling congestion in the network. They're actually doing this application where they're allowing specific applications to take priority. So, for instance, some operators are, they know people are crazy about Facebook, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
So they're allowing for those Facebook updates to happen more quickly and to get through and kind of be prioritized over other types of non-real-time data traffic. Now, that doesn't sound like a big deal, but that's all else being equal, that's a huge differentiator, operator to operator. If you can say to your customers, use Facebook on our network, it's going to go faster. That's a pretty big deal.
That's pretty cool. And what do you think of the acronym now QoE, quality of experience? Do you see that as a real thing or something that's more of a marketing item?
It can be more of a marketing item, but I like that people are at least. I like the whole holistic idea of it. I mean, for me, quality of experience it starts in the store. It's the
mm-hmm.
retail packaging. It's, that I didn't cut my fingers on the plastic, that I didn't pay too much, that when I'm using the device, it's working proper. I mean, it's the whole thing. It's the graphic design. So my definition of quality experience is really actually the whole experience. I think some people define it a little bit more narrowly, but I think operators are going to get praised or blamed for everything when they talk quality of experience. They are already.
Mm-hmm.
People will say like, "Oh, I don't like this operator, but I do like this one," and it turns out they actually are complaining about hardware, or something like that. So I think as that term kind of catches on, people, and I think it will catch on, people are going to define it differently. But I think in general, if an operator has a view toward really providing a great customer experience from the flyer they get in their mailbox to their first mobile broadband bill, then they'll do okay. If they're thinking about it as holistically as possible, they'll do all right.
All right. Well, light reading has a great perspective on things. You also have a great way of bursting the hype balloons. I'm really wondering where you're aiming your pin on this topic of new business model right now.
Well, because it's so new, this is uncharted. These are uncharted waters for us a little bit because we're usually writing about and commenting on things that we don't experience personally,
Mm-hmm.
and these are really, we're talking about consumer experiences. So I think what you're going to see from us is we're going to react first as consumers now. When we're talking about how these different business models are taking hold, whether they're working or not, whether the experience is good or not. Sometimes even within our staff, we disagree about whether an operator has the right idea. Okay. And I think that's healthy because, definitely as a publication, we're not going to pull any punches when something sounds like it's not going to work. But I think that we're having a little level of disagreement about we like this business model but not that business model. I think that's actually healthy because it shows that sort of this stuff isn't really completely sorted out yet. And depending on the operator and depending on the country, different models are going to emerge at the same time. And, it's kind of, it sounds like a non-answer, but it's kind of interesting that some models are going to do really well in one country and do really poorly in another country. So above all else, the operators are going to need to be extremely flexible, and I think that's why we're covering this almost as a business model issue. We have an editorial campaign right now called Bridging the Chasm, where we're looking at how integrated the operators themselves are in their technology groups, how integrated they are with their network groups, because we see that as a fair measurement of how flexible an operator is overall. And the ones that are the most flexible and the most willing to stick their neck out a little bit, I think the payoff's going to be a lot bigger for them.
So imagination and flexibility there. That's great. Hey, Phil, we've run out of time for today. It's been really fun to interview you for once. I've been on the other side with you. I want to thank you for your time. And of course, thank you, the audience, for listening to IP Talk Radio. We're always interested in hearing your feedback and suggestions. You can email us with comments at iptalkradio@ericsson.com or tweet us on EricssonIP. I'm your host, Don McCullough. Please tune in next time as we continue to keep you informed with the latest development in IP networking.